the chime.
Thank you.
Hold it close to the mic.
Good morning. My name is Helen Foss, and I have the pleasure of welcoming you as today's worship associate. Welcome to First Unitarian Church of Wilmington, Delaware. Welcome to all of you who are here in person in the sanctuary this morning, and welcome to all of you at home who are looking at us and joining us online. A very special welcome to the children who are here with us this morning. They will be here with us for the first part of the service. Welcome to you all. No matter the hue of your skin or the origin of your ethnicity, welcome whomever you love and wherever you are on your spiritual journey. You are welcome here. If you're new to First Unitarian, I invite you to check out our website. It's firstuuwilm.org to learn more about us and to sign up for our email newsletter that will come to you every Friday in your inbox. The COVID level is low today, so we've relaxed the mask mandate, and we're inviting everybody who's present in the sanctuary to gather in fellowship in the parish hall afterwards. I think there are going to be some treats, too. As from the choir, yeah. As soon as Reverend Larry mentioned to me what today's topic was, that it would be on our Universalist heritage, I knew I was in for a treat. You see, I have been a Unitarian Universalist for over 50 years now. I know that's a really long time. Hard to imagine when you're your age. And it's a mouthful when we have to say our tradition, Unitarian Universalism. That's a lot to get out. And how many of you have had to practice that? A Unitarian Universalist. Our children grew up here in this church, and I knew they had to learn how to say that too. Actually, I realized in hindsight, when I joined the church, I was only hearing the Unitarian part and focusing on reason and intellectual searching. And it wasn't until some years later that I really developed an appreciation for the Universalist legacy and the richness that they brought to our faith tradition. In fact, some of what I appreciate most now about our faith is the spirituality and wanting to be generous and loving and ever more inclusive. Thus, here's to our Unitarian and our Universalist foremothers and fathers, and here's to Reverend Larry and the opportunity to explore some of these ideas with you this morning. Now, let us prepare our hearts and minds for worship.
Thank you. That was just heard the song. Yeah, it was just great. Thank you. So Helen and I are going to do the call to worship this morning. Some people think that God is a feeling deep in your heart.
Some people think that God's all around us, the world of which we are a part.
Some people think that God is the flowers, the earth.
What's doing wrong and what's right.
Some people think that God's is God, thoughts that we think on our own. But here in this church, in this place together, we never need to think or to question alone.
John. And often they told him to get out of their town. Now, John started to feel really disheartened because people did not want to hear his message of a loving God and that God is love. And then the unthinkable happened. John's son and wife became very ill. And John spent all of his money and their money trying to save them. But they died. And so did John's brothers and sisters. And John went into debt. And back then, when you were in debt, you went to jail. So John is in jail, and then one of his friends comes and is able to bail him out and get him out of jail. And John decided, once he's out of jail, that's it. I'm not going to preach anymore. And then he made the decision he wanted to leave England altogether and go to the American colonies. So he got on a ship and sailed away. Now, meanwhile, as John's growing up and spending time in London, there was a man in New Jersey named Thomas Potter. Now, Potter was a farmer who owned lots of land. And on that land, Thomas Potter built a church. The thing is, the church sat empty for 10 years. Now, while the church is sitting empty, Thomas is waiting for just the right person to show up. The ship John Murray was sailing on finally made it to America. But the water got shallow, the ship ran aground, and by hitting a sandbar, and they were stuck. Also, they'd been in the ship for a long time, so they were running low on food and water. So the captain asked John to go ashore and see if he could find food and water for the sailors on the ship. Now, John went ashore, and he walked through some pine trees. He came to a clearing with a large house, and to his astonishment, a small church. Where do you think he was? Huh? What do you think? Yes. Yeah, he was at Thomas Potter's farm. He had arrived at Thomas Potter's farm. And Thomas Potter was so happy to meet John Murray and gave him food and water for the sailors on the ship. And then he invited John Murray to come back and have dinner with him that night. So when John came back, Thomas Potter showed him the chapel and said, "I am so glad you are here. You may be the very person I've been waiting for." And John Murray's like, "I don't know about that. What waiting for? Why would you be waiting for me?" And Thomas explained, "You see, I've thought a lot about religion. The trouble is, my ideas are very different from the ideas of the preachers around here. I want a preacher who will preach about a loving God who saves all people, not just a chosen few. I want to hear a message about renewal and hope. I think I built this church 10 years ago, hoping that one day a preacher would arrive and preach a universalist message. Today, when I saw your ship in the bay, a voice inside me, a little light inside me, seemed to say, there, Potter, in that ship may be just the person you're waiting for. John said quietly, I am not a preacher. But, said Thomas Potter, can you say that you never preached? John finally admitted that he was a minister. And though at first he didn't want to, he finally agreed to preach. And that Sunday, John Murray climbed into the pulpit and told the people there to go out and give people a glimpse of God's love. Give them not hell, but hope, he said. And so, on Sunday morning, September 30th, 1770, Thomas Potter's dream came true, and the first Universalist sermon was delivered in his little church in New Jersey. At last, he could hear a preacher who talked of love instead of punishment. As for John Murray, he felt like a new person. John Murray suddenly remembered the power of his Universalist faith. Thomas Potter helped John Murray renew his commitment to Universalism and find the confidence to continue to spread the message of love to others. And now, with love in our hearts, we will sing our children to their rooms.
So let us join now in a time of prayerful meditation. Today I've chosen a meditation written by Rebecca Parker. Your gifts, whatever you discover them to be, can be used to bless or curse the world. The mind's power, the strength of the hands, the reaches of the heart, the gift of speaking, listening, imagining, seeing, waiting, any of these can serve to feed the hungry, bind up wounds, welcome the stranger, praise what is sacred, do the work of justice, or offer love. Any of these can draw down the prison door, hoard bread, abandon the poor, obscure what is holy, comply with injustice, or withhold love. You must answer this question. What will you do with your gifts? Choose to bless the world. The choice to bless the world is more than an act of will, a moving forward into the world with the intention to do good. It is an act of recognition, a confession of surprise, a grateful acknowledgement that in the midst of a broken world, unspeakable beauty, grace, and mystery abide. There is an embrace of kindness that encompasses all life, even yours. And while there is injustice or evil, there moves a holy disturbance, a benevolent rage, a revolutionary love, protesting, urging, insisting, that which is sacred will not be defiled. Those who bless the world live their life as a gesture of thanks for this beauty and this rage. The choice to bless the world can take you into solitude to search for the sources of power and grace, native wisdom, healing, and liberation. More, the choice will draw you into community, the endeavor shared, the heritage passed on, the companionship of struggle, the importance of keeping faith, the life of ritual and praise, the comfort of human friendship, the company of earth, its chorus of life, welcome you. None of us alone can save the world. Together, that is another possibility waiting. So now, in this time of shared silence, let us search for the sources of power and grace within us and among us as this gathered community. Our hearts are still heavy with the news of the tragedy of the earthquake in Turkey and Syria. Too much for any one heart to hold. So much in terms of people that have died, those who are grieving, houses that have been demolished, infrastructures that can no longer support people in the ways that they would expect to be supported. So we send love and aid to those places the best that we can. We remember them so that they will not be forgotten, but embraced by a love that's broader than any one of us can provide alone. Who else are you holding in love this morning? I'm thinking of Jay Harry, our member who is recovering from surgery. I'm thinking about Cinda's husband, Jack, who's back in the hospital and getting some treatment. Who else are you holding in your heart that you want to surround with love this morning? Lynn Ingersoll. Cinda. May our holding them in love in this moment not stop in this moment, but continue during this week as we radiate love and healing and as we decide to be a blessing in this world. So may it be. Amen. I stand before you this morning, a year and a half or so of my ministry with you, with a great and genuine affection. Particularly as we have been thawing out of the pandemic. I've had more opportunities to interact with you as individuals in small groups, formally and informally, with longer-term members, attenders, and newcomers. I've gained a particular affection and not a generic one. You are no longer the unknown entity that I had to speak to some weeks last year in an empty sanctuary during our periodic lockdowns while staring at a camera and imagining your faces, that is, those faces that I had already met up to that point. You are no longer those who would simply have to wave to me on your way out the door at the end of the service when we were not having a fellowship time or lingering after the service. You are no longer appearing only from the chest up in boxes on a screen like a Jeopardy game, popping in and out of the focus once you've given your answer. We have been materializing more and more before each other's eyes. Look around. And we're looking at you on camera as well. You've become less of an abstraction to me, the congregation, and more of a group of individuals gathering together for worship, for classes, for social gatherings, for one-on-one conversations in this building and online. I much prefer using congregation as a verb because I enjoy congregating with you. I hope you are sensitized to the fact that when a minister joins you in the middle of a pandemic, those of you who have known each other for years actually know who you miss seeing. I hope you realize that the minister only knows those he has actually met or gone to visit, or those who suddenly appear before his eyes, or have sent him notes now and then to introduce themselves. Thank you. Now I've had some surprise appearances from the congregation, having members introduce themselves like Lynn Ingersoll and Brouhaha, or the time I was who said, "Hi, I see you on Sundays online." Or the time I was walking in Longwood Gardens and this woman appeared out of nowhere to say, "I know you. I see you on television every Sunday." And everybody was looking to see who she might be referring to. With actual congregating comes knowing some of your stories and your sagas, some of your particularities and proclivities. When you actually have the joy of getting to know those attending a Unitarian Universalist congregation, you begin to know that some among us desire an evolving spirituality, and some prefer nothing that sounds spiritual. Some of us are searching for some connection to that which is holy. Some want to be free of anything that sounds too close to God. Some want only their intellect titillated, and others want their heart stirred as well. Don't you wonder how it is that any Unitarian Universalist minister in any one of our typical multi-perspectival congregations doesn't become tongue-tied trying to speak to everyone in the room in their particular love language? How? Well, I'll tell you how. It's a secret. Are you ready for this esoteric knowledge? Okay, lean in. As a UU preacher, you find yourself using the word "or" a lot. Let me illustrate. In a prayer or a sermon, you might hear something like God or the holy, or what you hold most sacred, or God of many names or no name at all, or may just be one of our most overused words as Unitarian Universalists. And I might add that to me, somehow, a prayer that begins with, "to whom it may concern or not concern," doesn't sound that grounded or dignified. And now, beyond that particular tactic of the word or, here's another secret. You simply have to come to love folks in all of their particularities and proclivities, and just hope that they can abide in love as well with each of us, practicing our polyglot skills and sharing our gifts with one another. But you knew those things already, I'm sure. And since I realize now that I'm speaking to an advanced group this morning, I have assessed that you're ready for a more advanced lesson, right? Okay, my friends, the real secret, whether you've realized it or not, is that we can love each other in all of our multiple perspectives, proclivities, and preferences while congregating with one another because we are also universalists. Let me explain. The Reverend Richard Gilbert, who was raised in one of our many Universalist churches in rural areas, I actually visited the church that he was raised in upstate New York, said, "A purely universalistic stance is one that embraces diversity without judgment, that celebrates our different ways of looking at religious faith, that understands our theological agenda is not to convert others to our way of thinking, but to share our own, to listen to one another, and to celebrate what unites us." This is kind of an inside joke, but I'm kind of feeling fired up as I'm preaching about universalism. In other words, the key to our not being tongue-tied when trying to speak in such a religiously diverse group is to love one another in this universalistic way. Love, like it says in the song that we opened with today, and thanks, Jacqueline, thanks, choir. Love can build a bridge between my heart, your heart and mine. Love can build a bridge. Don't you think it's time? Don't you think it's time? Another modern interpreter of a Universalist theology, Reverend Forrester Church, helps to make this point when he wrote, "We are weaned on the rational presumption that if two people disagree, only one can be right. This works better in mathematics than it does in theology." Universalism reminds us of that. So whether you are aware of it or not, it is our Universalist heritage that allows us to congregate the ways we do with multiple perspectives and our varied capacities to listen to one another and to celebrate what unites us. We realize that there is, as the words of the song by Rebecca Parker says, which was also inspired by Universalism, there is a love holding us. There is a love holding all that we love. Universalism has sometimes been referred to as the forgotten you in Unitarian Universalism. So today I want to remember Universalism and its gifts to us, even if we don't recognize them or have never recognized them. I want to help us to recognize this most explicitly today. After all, ever since the consolidation of the American Unitarian Association and the Universalist Church of America in 1961, we have called ourselves Unitarian Universalists. That's a lot of syllables for sure. No wonder we often shorten it by just saying Unitarian. During those late 1950s deliberations around the consolidation of those two denominations that were already growing closer to one another, different names were being considered. One that was considered was Liberal Church of America. Now, somehow what prevailed in spite of all the syllables is Unitarian Universalists. In fact, these words connect us to threads of history and of theology that contain centuries and a procession of women and men whom we've inherited these particular traditions. These names, Unitarian and Universalist, connect us across the world's religions with others who have similar Unitarian or Universalist understandings. So our cumbersome names were preserved without a hyphen in 1961. And to this day, the inside joke among Universalists is that even though Unitarian comes first in our name, they know that in their heart of hearts that Unitarian is an adjective. And so they are Unitarian Universalists. As I pointed out in a recent newcomers gathering, I have often felt it's ironic that even though many of our congregation claim some ambivalence or even some allergies to theology, as if it were a dietary intolerance, that we still refer to ourselves by these theological terms, Unitarian and Universalist. So in this sermon, I'm only going to focus on the Universalist part of our dynamic. The written version of this will also have something to say about our Unitarian version as well, history as well. So before I shift into talking about Universalism, let me give you a quiz. Who knows the answer to this question? How do Universalists get holy water? Anybody know? They boil the hell out of it. I thought you might know that one, Richard, so I was looking over to you. Or okay, maybe you did. Universalism. Oh, gotcha. Okay, well, the thunder's already out there. Universalism refers to the theological belief in universal salvation, the belief that all will be saved and share in the glory of God in heaven, or for the restorationist universalists, the belief that all will eventually be saved and share in the glory of God in heaven, or, as some say, live in harmony with the divine. What was controversial about Universalism is not only that it did not believe in eternal damnation, but eventually that all Christians and non-Christians would go to heaven or spend time in harmony with the divine. Universalist ideas also persisted in Christian theology from its beginnings. The organized movement of Universalism in America was launched over 250 years ago, and Catherine shared with us one of the stories that we tell about Universalism's beginnings here in this country. Another pop quiz question. You ready? Some of you, I know, will know the answer to this. Many of you, I'm sure, can tell me what's the difference between a Unitarian and a Universalist. I'm sure you've heard this statement attributed to Reverend Thomas Starr King, who made this distinction in the 19th century between the Universalists and the Unitarians at the time by saying, Universalists think God is too good to damn them forever. Unitarians think that they are too good to be damned forever. Now, this is a generalization for sure, but it captures the tendency for Unitarian urbanites to emphasize a staunch individual spiritual development and salvation by character, in contrast to the more rural Universalists. As Unitarian Universalist theologian Paul Razor states, who encourage the believer to think of their own individual interest as inseparably linked with the eternal welfare of the whole body of humanity. What today we tend to call the beloved community. Both Unitarian and Universalism share a valuing of the role of reason in religion, as opposed to the emotionalism of the Great Awakening of Jonathan Edwards. Both movements contrasted themselves with the Calvinist views of human depravity and a punishing God and a predestined elect that alone would be saved. And during the time that they were approaching consolidation, both preferred to understand that religious thinking and understanding evolved as human consciousness and our knowledge expanded, rather than to shellac rigid documents, creeds, or particular fixed interpretations of Scripture. The Universalist Church in America promoted the idea that eternal damnation was not in the character of a loving God. The agnostic Robert Ingersoll wrote, "I want to thank the Universalist Church that at least they believe in a God who is a, quote, gentleman. They believe at least in a heavenly Father who will leave the latch string out until the last child gets home." Or as Universalists sometimes proclaim, the love of God is so powerful and dependable that the last sinner will be dragged kicking and cursing into heaven. In our time, of course, many mainline Protestants, even some Catholic thinkers, are not so hyper-focused on this emphasis on the geography of the afterlife as they were in earlier times. As one person says, hell was no longer a burning issue for many Americans. An increasing number of mainline preachers stopped stoking its fires. Although these universalist views of no hell and a loving God may seem irrelevant or inconsequential to some of us now, they actually had a practical relevance early on in the development of the Universalist work in the world, who at their peak in the 1830s were the seventh largest denomination in this country. The Universalists actually found social implications that their views of the hereafter could have on the here and now. Their view that all would be saved and come into harmony with the divine translated into an understanding of the inherent worth and dignity of every human being, which is captured to this day in our Unitarian Universalist principles. With such a view of humanity and of divinity, our Universalist ancestors had a history of condemning slavery, that's for sure. John Murray, who we heard about, is credited with founding the first Universalist church in America in Gloucester, spoke at the Universalist Convention in Philadelphia in 1790, along with Benjamin Rush, a Universalist-leaning signer of the Declaration of Independence, and condemned slavery. Those resolutions were signed by many Universalist ministers and advocated among their church conventions. Benjamin Rush, by the way, was a vigorous foe of slavery, advocated the abolition of the death penalty, advocated for better education for women, supported free public schools, was a pioneer in the study and treatment of mental illness, and insisted that the insane had a right to be treated with respect. This was Universalism in practice. Clara Barton expressed her Universalist faith through the founding of the American Red Cross. Universalist Reverend Olympia Brown, the first woman ordained by a religious denomination, the Universalist Church of America, expressed her Universalism in the work for women's rights and the women's right to vote. In the 20th century, more and more Universalists put their emphasis on perfecting this world and dealing with the social ills of its time so that others could be freed from oppressions, poverty, maltreatment in this world now, not some hereafter, later. Universalists evolved and broadened their views over time, particularly in the 20th century. One of those Universalists was Clinton Lee Scott, who wrote, "A true universalism in religion goes beyond Christian denominationalism and sees all religions of whatever time or place striving in imperfect ways to achieve a good life for humanity. This is one world where all things of worth are sacred." Skinner, who worked with immigrants, worked with working people, helped address the issues of racism and poverty in his time, became someone who really articulated the social implications of Universalism. He had a kind of this worldly mysticism. He said, can there not be a social and political mysticism which calls forth an eager faith? Can we not visualize another better world which is not yet real but is capable of becoming a reality? The old mysticism, he wrote, was individualistic. The other mysticism would contain a diviner urge and lay upon us, humanity, a sense of something great to be done. So in searching for its identity in the 20th century, Universalism came to adopt new understandings of what it offered to the religious landscape. The Universalist minister Kenneth Patton, in his experimental Universalist church in Boston at the Charles Street Meeting House, explored some new ways of giving expression to a Universalist faith. In this meeting house, Patton created a space with a mural of the Andromeda galaxy at the front of the sanctuary, and large brass symbols of all the world's religions and humanities, arts and sciences displayed in the sanctuary. Patton's religion for one world was his new understanding of universalism for a modern era. Patton, in the estimation of one of his colleagues, said, taught a monotone rationalism how to sing. It was he who taught stumble-footed humanism how to dance. It was he who cried, "Look," and taught our eyes to see the glory in the ordinary. It was Patton who wrote those words often used in our congregations to this day. Let us worship with eyes, ears, and fingertips. Let us love the world through heart and mind and body. Let us worship. And let us learn to love. So the Universalist emphasis on creating a beloved community in the here and now also sought ways to find truth from many sources in the world. Forrest Church articulated his modern Universalist theology as a 21st century universalism in 2010 in this way, using the symbol of a cathedral of the world, which Helen will read for us.
By Forrest Church. Above all else, contemplate the windows. In the cathedral of the world, there are windows without number, some long forgotten, covered with many patinas of grime, others revered by millions, the most sacred of shrines. Each in his own way is beautiful. Some are abstract, others representational, some dark and meditative, others bright and dazzling. Each window tells a story about the creation of the world, the meaning of history, the purpose of life, the nature of humankind, the mystery of death. The windows of the cathedral are where the light shines through. A 21st century theology based on the concept of one light and many windows offers its adherents both breadth and focus. Honoring multiple religious approaches, it only attributes the truth claims of abolitionists. It is because fundamentalists claim that the light shines through their window only. Skeptics draw the opposite conclusion. Seeing the bewildering variety of windows and observing the folly of worshipers, they conclude there is no light, but the windows are not the light. They are where the light shines through. We shall never see the light directly, only as refracted through the windows of the cathedral, prompting humility. Life's mystery lies hidden. The light is veiled, yet being halfway in size between the creation itself and our body's smallest constituent part, that we can encompass with our minds, the universe that encompasses us is a cause for great wonder. Awakened by the light, we stand in the cathedral, trembling with awe.
Okay. Thank you, Helen. So as we congregate together, I hope we receive these gifts from Universalism, bringing about the beloved community in the here and now, cultivating a humility that allows us to tremble with awe in the universe, recognizing the truths that come to us from many sources and one light that shines through them all, making room for the marginalized voices in our society so their truth can also shine through us and inform us. I try to keep that image of the cathedral, the window in the cathedral, before me as I look at you this morning, and recognize that each of us is a window in that cathedral window of the world. In all of our differing particularities and peculiarities, a light shines through each of us and from all of us, not just any one of us. The reflection of that multicolored light shining through the cathedral window onto the cathedral floor allows us to hold each other and to keep abiding in love, a love that holds us and a love that holds all that we love.
As we officially launch our stewardship campaign today, we're reminding ourselves of what this congregation means to us and to those we serve now and in the future. Our theme this year is Generating the Future Now. We want to hear the experiences of various generations of our members. Today, we will hear from Idris Harrell.
Good morning. My name is Idris Harrell, and I am a member of First Unitarian Church, and I am on this year's Pledge Drive Committee. My husband Dave and I have participated in many activities at First U as we've raised our 2 children over the years, and I want to talk about what this church means to my family now. As our children grew, they did not always fit the mold of what a good person is by some of our extended family, whether it be in their beliefs, their sexuality, or how they expressed who they were, etc. And while this created conflict and disconnect with some family members, it was never an issue at First U. Our children are still loved for who they are by those who know them here at their church. They were teens in their youth group who identified as trans or non-binary and changed their names and pronouns. Those kids continued attending First U without having to renegotiate, hide, or justify their existence. What a gift we have given our children to allow them to explore their identity without fear of rejection from an important part of their own community. This is what we offer to people, a place to be loved for themselves, not for an ideal image with specific beliefs or ways of living. And it is a message that is needed even more now. First U is also a place that allows us to love others in our wider community through different actions, such as supporting youth who have aged out of foster care, providing meals at Emmanuel Dining Room, participating in political and social justice actions with the Human Rights Task Force, and so on. Your financial support has done all of that. Your contributions now will create opportunities for people outside First U to hear our message by increasing our technological capabilities and social media presence. Your contributions will create new programs for younger generations to experience our work of acceptance and love. We want to provide a variety of activities to members, work with community partners to improve the lives of others, and to be a good employer to our staff. If we have the resources to do these well, we will make a difference in Delaware and the world. And if we do this, we will draw new members to First U, and it will sustain our church. Our pledge drive goal is ambitious, but the goals of First Unitarian Church are ambitious. I invite you to partner with us now to create an active church for all generations. Generating our future starts now.
Thank you, Idris. Those of you here in the sanctuary this morning could make your pledge today by filling out a pledge card that's at a table in the parish hall, or all of you at home and here can go online and make your pledge that way. Now, while we're planning ahead today, we also have to take care of everything going on now simultaneously. So as you know, in order to keep the lights on and our programs going now, there are 4 ways that you can give. Those of you here in the sanctuary can use the cash box in the back for your cash or your check. And those of you at home can find the other 3 ways that will be on your screen while we hear the offertory. In the meantime, please join me in the dedication of the offertory. To the work of the congregation, which is a tapestry of love and action, we dedicate our lives and these our offerings. This is complicated, sorry. If you have lit a chalice at home, I invite you to extinguish it now while Reverend Larry extinguishes the sanctuary's chalice. And I read these words by our Pike Creek UU minister, Reverend Gregory Pelly. He says, "Don't stop believing. Hold on to a belief that there is a motive force in this universe, in this life that we call love, an energy that keeps us in deep relationship with all that we call living and all that we claim is not living. All the wholeness of the universe, from quanta to you, to the oak tree, to the Hercules Corona Borealis Great Wall, the largest known structure in the observable universe. Again, he says, hold on to the belief that there is a motive force in the universe, in this life, that we call love."
Welcoming committee, just look around the room. You are all part of our welcoming committee this morning. So welcome each other. Welcome and greet those who are visiting us for the first time. And let's show them what love has to do with it. So these closing words are often attributed to John Murray. They're actually by Alfred Cole. You may possess only a small light, but uncover it and let it shine. Use it in order to bring more light and understanding to the hearts and minds of women and men. Give them not hell, but hope and courage. Sing together.